Most people think decluttering means living in a bare white room with one plant and a linen throw. The truth is, decluttering has nothing to do with having less stuff or with becoming a minimalist. In this video, I'm going to tell you what decluttering actually is and why the internet has made it seem way harder than it needs to be. I've been writing about this for years now on my blog Eye of the Calm, which has an audience of over 30,000 women. And the single biggest thing that I keep hearing over and over again is that I want my house to feel less stressful, but I'm not ready to throw things out. So if that's you, stay on, because this video is going to change the way you think about every single thing you own. Let's go back for a second and understand where this all began. Why does everyone assume decluttering is about owning less? It's because most decluttering content online, the Marie Kondo era, the minimalism movement, the 100 items or fewer challenges, all point to the same direction. Own less, have less, be less attached to stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But somewhere along the way, it attached a very specific aesthetic to decluttering. And that aesthetic intimidated a lot of women. I mean, let's face it, a lot of us didn't want an all-white room. Or maybe our partners didn't. Or maybe some of us just got so overwhelmed by this perfect aesthetic that it seemed like too much of an overhaul to even begin. Here's the thing though, that all-white room with the pampas grass vase, that's not what decluttering is. That's what minimalism looks like on Pinterest. And somewhere along the way, someone mixed these two things up. And now we have an entire generation of perfectly intelligent women opening their cupboards and doing nothing because they feel like they need a bare white room and only 5 dresses before they're even allowed to begin. Truth is, you don't need less stuff. What you need is clarity about the stuff you already have. Before you even start to declutter, you need to understand the story your stuff is actually trying to tell you. There's real psychological research behind this. A researcher called Russell Belk spent years studying why we feel so connected to our possessions. His work on what he called the extended self showed us that we don't just own things, we incorporate them into our sense of who we are. Your objects aren't just objects, they're a part of how you define yourself. So every object you own is actually telling you a story about yourself. Which is why letting go of something doesn't just feel like throwing something out, it feels like erasing a part of you. And that's why it's hard. But once you actually start listening to the story your stuff is telling you, things start to change and they get really interesting. Clutter isn't a pile of too much stuff. Clutter is a mismatch. It's the stuff that belongs to a version of you that no longer exists, sitting in your present life, taking up space, pretending it fits. Think about it. The things you can never throw away aren't the things that you use every day. They are the things that are tied up to a version of you. The woman you once were, the woman you thought you'd become, the woman other people expected you to be. Okay, let me explain this in the only normal way I know how to explain anything, with a Batman analogy. God, I'm such a nerd. At any point in your life, there are really 3 versions of you in the running. There's past you. Past you is like Tim Burton's Batman. Theatrical, a little gothic, a little dramatic, very into a specific aesthetic that felt exactly right at that time. Past you had a flamboyant, slightly questionable sense of style, but you owned the outfits, the hobbies, and the bookshelf to go along with it. Then there's aspirational you, the you think you're supposed to become. And that's Nolan's Batman. Obviously. Suave, brooding, has his life together in a very serious, very composed way. Aspirational you buys the gritty black Chelsea boots, the protein powder, the 5-year planner, for the version of you who hasn't shown up yet. Maybe never will. And then there's present you. Present you is like Matt Reeves' Batman, still figuring it out. A little raw, asking real questions instead of performing an answer. Not as polished as Nolan's version, not as theatrical and cool as Burton's version, but finally, honestly, you. Here's the problem. Most of our homes are like wardrobes built for all 3 Batmans at once. Burton's cape is lying next to Nolan's boots, is lying next to whatever eyeliner Reeves' Batman wears. And you are standing in the middle of all this wondering why getting dressed in the morning feels like an identity crisis. None of that is clutter because you have too much of it. It's clutter because it belongs to Batmans that are not you. And every day, as it sits in your home, you walk past evidence of who you were and who you wanted to be. And your brain quietly registers the gap between those versions and the one you're actually living right now. That gap has a cost. Your brain, at any given moment, is trying to hold a coherent story about who you are. It's not abstract philosophy, it's just how cognition works. We need internal consistency, a sense that who we are and how we live should roughly match up. Now imagine if your home is full of objects that keep telling different stories of different versions of you. The corporate wardrobe for the job you left, the aspirational kitchen equipment for the cook you haven't become, pile of books you feel guilty about not having read yet. Your brain can't fully commit to your present self if it's surrounded by artifacts that belong to someone else. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, holding two contradictory things as true at the same time. I am who I am now, and I'm keeping this stuff for who I was. This dissonance costs energy every day, quietly. And the visual processing load of clutter hits hardest when the objects are identity laden. So, a pile of things on a random shelf, annoying. But the box of things from a career you left, that costs differently. Roster and colleagues in their research found that the emotional weight of clutter tied to regret, aspiration, identity is specifically what drives the link between clutter and psychological well-being. So it's not just the volume of stuff, it's the emotional charge attached to the stuff you have that matters. Which is why the Pinterest version of minimalism isn't the fix. That version just tells you to reduce volume on the surface without ever addressing the actual cause. It treats the symptom, not the source. Which is why to truly declutter your life from the things that no longer serve you, you don't need this packaged idea of minimalism. You need clarity. Clarity that lets you ask the tough questions about the hard to let go items in your home and finally, slowly, gently let them go. So, how do you actually figure out what belongs to present you and what doesn't? You don't need a whole declutter day. You just need to ask 3 questions. Pick up any object that's been sitting there for months, things that you keep thinking about decluttering but then putting them back. Run those things through these 3 questions. Question 1. Does this belong to someone who I am now or someone who I was? Not I could use this someday, not I liked this once. Who you are today, does this thing fit the person you are right now? This isn't a judgment on the old version of you. She was real, she mattered. But if the object belongs to her and not to you, it's not your burden to keep carrying. Question 2. If I didn't already own this, would I choose this today? You feel bad about letting it go because you spent money on it, or maybe someone gifted it to you, or because it just feels wasteful. But the money is already spent, whether it's in your cupboard or not. The question isn't about the past. The question is, if you walk into a shop and see it, would you bring this item home today? If your honest answer is no, that's your answer. Question 3. What version of you is keeping this alive? This is the quieter one. It's not for every object, but it's for the ones you genuinely can't move on from. Pick up that object and ask yourself honestly, what is the story this object is telling me? Is this a story I'm still living? So I have a box of paints sitting in my house right now. I bought it 5 months ago, completely convinced I'm going to get into painting. I've used it 4 times. It's still sitting there. And I'm still not ready to admit that I might not be that person anymore. I'm not there yet. So I'm giving myself some time, some grace. But here's what's different now. I'm not afraid to ask the tough questions anymore. And to me, that's progress. Sometimes you'll pick something up and realize, oh, I kept this because I wasn't ready to admit that that part of my life was over. And it might be over. And that's okay. If it's too hard right now, just give yourself a concrete timeline, not an indefinite one, let's say 6 months or a year. If it still doesn't feel like it belongs to you by the time that date comes, just let it go. If you want help with this, if you want something to help guide you through the process of letting those difficult things go, I've actually built a free tool for this. It's called the Let It Go tool and it lives inside my Trash Bag Therapy app. It asks you these gentle, honest questions and takes you from I can't decide to an actual answer. I'll leave the link for it in the description below. I want to say something clearly because I don't think it gets said enough. You are not being asked to stop caring about things. You are not being asked to become someone who owns very little. You are not being asked to give up the part of you that's sentimental, complicated, or still figuring it out. You are only being asked one thing: to stop giving shelf space to the versions of you you've already grown out of. I have a shelf in my parents' home. It's stacked with notebooks that I filled from about the age of 10. School notes, diary entries, thoughts that I had at 15 that I was absolutely convinced were profound. I couldn't let them go. My mother couldn't let them go. Those notebooks belonged to a version of me that was very real. The notebooks were never the problem. The problem was that I thought letting go of those meant letting go of her. It doesn't. She's already in me. She doesn't need a shelf. So now you know what decluttering actually is. It's not about having less stuff, it's about making more room for who you are right now. It's about asking the tough questions about the things you own, being honest with yourself, and gently letting them go. But you might be thinking, okay, I get it, I understand all of that, but I still don't know where to actually start. Every time I try, I just freeze. I walk into a room, I look at the mess, I don't know where to start, and so I do nothing. There's an actual science based reason this happens, and there are specific ways to make it stop. That's what the next video is about, right here. If it's not up yet, just hit subscribe so you know when it drops. I'll see you there.